Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Creating a Fantastical Life podcast. It's Jen, and today I have a very special guest for 12 Days of Breakthroughs. Please welcome Mikey Vong. Mikey is a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu black belt. He's competed at many high-level tournaments, including but not limited to the Asian Open, Pan American, and World Championships. Aside from competitions, Mikey is a Jiu Jitsu coach and has been since he was a blue belt. Mikey has come from a large first generation Asian American. Mikey has come
Asian
from a large
Australian.
first generation Asian Australian family. So taking this career path was definitely unconventional, and it's been interesting for him balancing the old generation principles and new generation principles. We're going to touch upon a lot of this today. So thank you so much for being on the podcast,
No,
Mikey.
thanks for having me, Jen. Appreciate it.
So this whole season of 12 Days of Breakthroughs is all centered around unbrainwashing ourselves. So I want to start by asking you, what was something that you were brainwashed or conditioned to believe about yourself, other people, or the world that you later just found out was not true?
I think it's more, for me, it was the whole male things where emotions, right? It's like, all right, if you just suck it up and, we come here, especially first gens, just keep hustling. And I guess in a way, because you're trying to survive and build a new thing. So any minor things where you might feel, okay, I feel a bit sad about this, whatever. And even sometimes when you're growing up, I feel this at school or this happened that, and like that, don't worry about it. Just, doesn't matter. Just keep pushing through. And then I think as you grow up and you, I guess, expand your horizons, you travel and whatnot, I find that everyone feels very similar to you, and it's okay to just express it. And I think coming from growing up like that, it's built up as like a huge thing. So, when you want to express emotion, you're like, oh my God, this is like it becomes a big thing in your head because you've been told to suppress it so long. And then meeting people and just saying, oh, I feel this, or I don't feel great. They're like, oh, that's nothing wrong with that. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, it's not that big of a deal. You mean it's okay just to. So I think a lot of that has been the biggest thing for me, like growing up saying, all right, you just got to do it and not express, and just having that being built up as something so big in my head. And then when you finally let things open, you realize it's not. And that has just changed everything, especially hitting like adulthood and doing, like I said, this career path. It's helped me so much, especially with competitions and stuff where you have so much in your head going on and being able to express it. Now, I'm not fully there, it's still a work in progress, but I think that's been the biggest revelation for me.
Yeah, like it's okay to have emotions and express it. It's interesting because you hit at multiple intersections, right? Like you're the oldest male in your family,
Yeah.
like amongst your siblings and stuff, and you're also Asian and you're also Australian. Has that played a part in how you were brought up to believe like how you can express emotions and like even what emotions are okay to express? Because I find like in Asian culture and like many cultures, anger seems to be like okay, and especially for
Yeah,
men
you're
or like
right.
whatever, but
Yeah.
like other things are not.
No, exactly. I completely agree. And I think, look, I'll be honest, I'm really blessed. I think for us first gens that we get to see this and then like experience Western culture where people are a bit open and we can talk about things. And so for me, yes, you said being the eldest, or not just my family, and then like amongst the cousins and stuff, you always looked at, even when you were younger, you're like, all right, you're the oldest, and you could be six, and like, oh, you're six already, you're the oldest, you should do this. And then, you're in high school, you can do this. And then as it progresses, you're always been, oh, but you finished uni, you're smarter, you can do this. And I'm like, wait a minute, when these guys are six, these guys are 12, why can't, they do that? So there is a level of, I guess, pressure with all that, when you feel like, everyone's relying on me and whatnot. So I got to be quite stoic and just push through. If there's anything, I'll deal with it later. Just you guys, you deal with the emotions and I'll keep pushing through. But it also gets to you in a sense of because you are that guy, you want to be. I don't know how to explain it. It's like, it's not that I want to be, but because there's that reliance, and I guess people feel a safety that, oh, if Mikey's got it, there's a sense of relief because it's going to be done, or I can rely on him. You don't want to show that, I guess, a chink in the armor to say, oh, like, and then everyone starts to panic, right? So having that, yes, I don't show emotion, I guess, there. But then growing up in Australia, where you meet people who are in similar situations, but not growing up Asian, they're like, no, it's okay. If I can't handle stuff, I'll just talk, to my dad or my brother or whatever, and I'll tell them, yeah, it's, this is a bit much for me. How about you guys take over a bit or whatever? And it's fine. And then as I guess we've lived here longer, and there's a bit of a mix of like Australian culture, especially how your parents go to work and all that, and your kids hang out with, different cultures. I think recently they're more accepting, so they have a chat, like even with my younger siblings stuff, talking about emotions at home. It's a weird thing, but I think I'm really thankful for it, because I look at from how I grew up, it's, again, first gen, just coming in, you don't know how to navigate all that, but now having that Western side, like seeing how my parents, my aunties interact with their children now, yeah, it's wonderful. So just to have both sides, I think it's great. Now, there's certain parts of me that's still very Asian that I don't think that part will ever go away. Like, yes, I want to express emotions, but in certain places or with certain people, I still don't. Like with my grandparents, whatever, because of their reliance, I still, as much as I want to express, like, I guess the Asian Australian side of me, I'm still very like, nah, maybe just not with this person type of thing.
Yeah, I think what you're hitting on there is sounding like emotional boundaries, right? And learning like kind of like who's safe, who's not as like safe, or who's not as open to that stuff. And like everybody's on their own journey. And so I think it's interesting, like keep catching you kind of in the middle of that, of you've gone through that first transition point of uncovering that there is this conditioning that is not your truth. It's not the way that you have to be. And you're kind of seeing like where else you can go with it. What is that like for you? And what is your truth of like who you should be, how emotions kind of play into your life, that you've had to replace that with?
It's more like processing. So you know how you grow up, right? And then especially first gen, I feel this. You go, oh, we had it. At least you have da da da, because back home, we didn't have this, or you're lucky. And I think it was more emotion processing in that way. And then because I had friends who are all first gen, so sometimes there's a lot of dismissing of emotions early. You might feel a certain way, and they're like, nah, we just got to suck it up because, man, our parents, they did da 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 and da. Like, I get that there's a sense where you process it and you got to have gratitude for what you have. That's fine. But at the same time, you can't dismiss, I found anyway, you dismiss it too much where you don't process the emotion. Like, yes, I have gratitude that, my family's come here and they had it harder, but you sometimes can't help feel the way you feel. And I think it's what I've learned, it's important just to process that emotion. So like a good example for me is like jiu-jitsu, right? I'm lucky enough that I get to travel and compete. I get to wake up and go to the gym and teach what I love. Now, yes, I have gratitude, but there's some days I just don't want to do it, I just don't like it. I just really hate jiu-jitsu or whatever. And yes, there's times you have to have gratitude, but no, it's great. But what I've learned is that instead of just pushing through it, I just process. I have to sit there with myself and say, look, at this moment, I just don't like jiu-jitsu. Yes, it's and a lot of people wish they were in my position, but I just don't feel great right now. And then exploring why I don't feel great. Is it jiu-jitsu? Is it things outside? And I think learning that has helped me so much, because being able to process that emotion and let yourself not feel guilty for having that emotion, I think has been really like life-changing for me. So
Yeah,
yeah.
no, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that example because like you're showing so much of like how to be human. And I think gratitude is definitely like is used to kind of beat people up now, like when you beat yourself
Yeah,
up too, right? Of like, oh, you should just be grateful and like, what do you have to
exactly.
complain about? And it's like that's not helpful at all. And like you
Yeah,
so
exactly.
like articulately demonstrated how you can hold space for both like the gratitude and also just the truth of how you feel. And like the sooner that you accept that and can process it, the sooner you can kind of move on from it. And it doesn't mean anything like I think with you expressing it, it's like it's so just it doesn't mean more than like this is just how you feel right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So with that though, yeah, I know how you had mentioned that one of the worst pieces of advice that you've ever gotten is that there's
Yes.
always someone who has it worse. And
Yes.
like in what situations has that come up for you as advice and like why is that so terrible?
Okay, so for me, it's like everyone's life experiences are different, right? And I think I found people don't allow it, and there's no gray area in processing these type of things, right? Like going off what I said about your parents, you didn't have it like us, we don't get this. For example, like processing emotions early and not being able to talk, like they didn't say, but an example they could say, oh, at least, you didn't get beat, your grandfather beat us, da da da, at least you didn't get, which is great, obviously, but it's still something that's, I guess, missing. So, for example, let's just say you, like me and my friends, will have a chat. Work is not great. I'm not feeling this. Oh man, at least you're not working at da 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 and doing long shifts or whatever. Or we just got to suck it up. And someone's got it worse. I look at people overseas and they're at least we're not in war or a lot of that. And as I grew up, I just don't like that dismissing of your current struggle. Like going on, what I said is just when I talk to my friends and my sisters and when we talk, I don't like to bring up that someone's got it worse. Like, yes, again, going back to my point, we have gratitude, but if you're feeling something now, it's okay. And I just like to have foster that safe space in my classes and then with my siblings and cousins to say, all right, like you feel bad now. Yes, you have all this, but you feel bad. That's okay. Let's have a chat. What's on your mind? How do we navigate it? And I think that's the most important thing. I don't like, all right, no, but someone's got it worse. You
Mm.
should just keep going. Be grateful. Exactly what you just said. Be
Yeah.
grateful. I think it's just terrible advice because then people put in more walls, right? Nah, and then you get in your head. Oh, last time I brought up something, just suck it up. And then you don't want to open up and things just get worse in your head. You might have a small problem. You go, oh, it's only a small problem. Now I don't want to bring it up because, I'm going to look like I'm spoiled and it's just people don't realize all these struggles add up, right? I think being able to express it early and say, hey, I just feel like this today, instead of holding on to that for the week. And then other stresses come and then you're just holding on to too much. And then you have a breakdown and it's sort of like a bit too late and you want to have that. So that's why I don't like that advice. And for my classes or whatever, I try to be very open and say, how are you feeling today? I'm not having a good session. That's fine. I won, I competed, but I come back, I just don't feel like rolling. I'm not happy. That's okay. Let's talk about it. What's going on in your mind? Is it jiu-jitsu related? Is it? And then there's barriers open and you get to have that nice openness. I love it. Like growing up Asian and not being able to have that and then exploring it through like meeting you and all that and exploring these emotions and knowing that there's a safe space where it's open. It's just wonderful. I don't know. And I try to foster that in my students after like hanging out with you and all that.
Aw, that's so amazing. You're such a loving and like genuine and safe presence. So, I feel very lucky to be able to call you my friend and knowing you like compassion is also such a big value for you. It's like it's how you lead your life and you can see it in the way that you literally just take action, but also everything that you're saying. What do you think the antithesis is to this intention behind someone has it worse than you, because I think like a lot of it's a trauma response, right?
Yes,
It's
yes,
kind of like
yes.
compartmentalization so you can like just survive. But what do you think like the intention behind that is, and like the positive intention behind it is,
Yes.
and like what's the solution, I guess?
Well, I guess the positive intention is we do have to, you know how they say stop and smell the roses and whatnot. You do have to do that sometimes. Like, yes, some days I'm upset and I'm like, oh, like, because I teach all the morning classes. So I'm up really early. You have a bad sleep the night before, da da da. And then driving there, I'm like, oh, I can't be bothered today. It's cold and whatnot. But you do have to catch it in that moment. So sometimes I'm driving there, I'm like, I catch myself. I sit in the car before I head into open up the gym and I say, look, I'm really lucky. I'm waking up early. Everyone pretty much wakes up early. They take a right turn, head to the freeway, and they have to do a job maybe they don't like. I get to take a left turn and head to the gym and do what I love. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think you need that. But I think it's just hard. Like I said before, like people don't allow the gray areas, right? And that, like, someone has it worse than you is actually great advice because it forces you to be like thankful for what you have. You know, you listen to that. Yes, someone has it worse and go, wow, we get to sit here and have a chat online. You know, life isn't too bad and whatnot. So you do need that. That's the positive side of it. So it does force you to say, oh, okay, I'm safely in my room. You know, I've got great internet, great friends that we can have a chat. And I think that's a positive. But I think it's just bad when it gets too dismissive and you don't get to the gratitude motion. Instead of saying, oh, wow, I get to talk with Jen and whatever, you just go, nah, okay, fine. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. I'll just shut off that emotion. I think that's where it gets bad. Well, that's what I've learned from jiu-jitsu, like going off a bit of a tangent here. Like in jiu-jitsu, nothing works 100%, right? You could learn the move that's done in competition by the best guy. You drill it 100 times, you can do it well. You could go to a competition and it just might not work. So I think with jiu-jitsu, you've learned that there's always has to be a balance somewhere, right? You go too much on one side, it's no good. Too much on the other side. I think allowing for that. I think a lot of people with advice, or especially first gens, where you're still trying to navigate things, you just one side or the other. Like it's either you, oh yeah, you can express emotions, you're weak, or if you don't express it, you're strong. But it's, you know, things have it worse, and you can have gratitude, or just people have it worse and you just shut off. Like there's no allowance for that midpoint just to explore. So I think that's sort of the main challenge, I guess, for most people.
Yeah, it's definitely a skill, like the discernment to know what is helpful and when is not helpful. Like even when you say if you're driving to jiu-jitsu to teach in the morning and it's cold and you can't be bothered, it's like maybe that's a situation where you've decided, okay, having perspective can help you tap into
Exactly.
gratitude
Oh, for
versus like
sure.
when it's not. So
Yeah, exactly. No, I definitely agree there.
before we jump into everything jiu-jitsu, one more thing on the topic of like growing up in, you know, in an ethnic minority and that whole experience being first generation. And when we had talked previously, like you have mentioned that something controversial that you hold is that respect shouldn't be automatically given, it has to be earned. And
Mm,
in Asian households, especially when filial piety is at play, and you kind of are like, you're still your own person, and you
yeah,
know, you being in a sport that is where hierarchy is so clearly defined, right, by the stripes that you have on your belt, by what color your belt is,
yeah.
how do you navigate that balance between having respect without reverence and also being able to respect yourself without, you know, betraying yourself?
Yeah, okay. So especially like, so you take it in the jiu-jitsu context, it's exactly what you said. You know, you're a black belt. And even I feel it now. When I was a brown belt, yes, people, you know, oh, Mike is a brown belt, you know, da da da. But I didn't realize the shift to a black has been quite big. You know, you walk in somewhere and, you know, people, oh, wow, I got to shake his hand first. I got to do this. And a lot of these formalities. And the reason why, so you know how you said, I said respect has to be earned. I see that both in Asian cultures and also in jiu-jitsu culture. You know, you have some black belts who will just act a certain way, like, you know, they're the best thing ever because they have the belt, and, you know, treat people a certain way, which as I went up through the ranks, I would see that and I said, I don't, like, you just can't help it. Like you see that action, and regardless of the belt, inside you just don't respect them, right? It's not like you can't just say, oh yeah, he's a black belt, he's acting like this, but I still got to respect him. Just inside you just feel it. You're like, I just don't like this guy, or I just don't like his style. This makes me feel uncomfortable. So I think for me, it's just realizing that I guess people just want to be treated like adults and just have, if you show respect to them first, then it's you sort of get it in return, right? Like I have students who have trained for 5 years, they're purple belts. Just because he's a purple belt doesn't mean, oh yeah, he doesn't know as much as me, do this way. It's like in my class, I'll teach something. And if I don't know the answer, which plenty of times I don't, I'll say, look, I don't understand this particular thing. Jake, you're pretty good at this. He may be a blue belt. Do you have any tips that you can help us? And I think that's how I gain. I guess in my class, it's more like a collaborative effort that they respect me because I treat them as people with a value instead of being, all right, no, I'm the boss. No, that only works for blue belts. Don't do that. This is a black belt technique. And it's very easy in that hierarchy to say that, just like Asian culture, someone might give terrible advice, but no, I'm the oldest, so we got to do it this way. You just got to break out of that, which it's easy to do in jiu-jitsu because once you're a black belt, there is more leniency of you can take your own path. And because you are a black belt, you can just still do whatever you want. But so you have a more opportunity to change things. Whereas in Asian culture, obviously, it's going to be very difficult. Like I might say something, but still, your parents will still tell you off like you're 10 years old. So it's a different work in progress there.
Right, for sure. So, because you touched upon how when you're dealing with like higher ranked belts and stuff, they can have this air about them that is just like, I'm the best, right? And like this very egotistical thing. And I think especially in sports, really in any field, that skill and mastery is of importance of how well you can do something or do your job. But in sports especially, there seems like there's such a danger of being either like absorbed by ego and letting that fuel how you behave, your growth and whatever, versus maybe on the opposite end, like always downplaying your ability and believing that you don't know anything, and almost like that imposter syndrome side. Like,
for sure, yeah, I completely agree. So what I've learned that's helped me a lot is just compartmentalizing both. So I'll have, I guess in a way, like two personas, like competitor and my own training Mikey, and then coach Mikey. I think before they were too molded, and then it was hard, like trying to be, I like being a compassionate coach, right? And just being with my guys. But then it sort of lost the fire when I would compete. But then if I went the other end where I'm competing and going hard, I'd realize I was more, not necessarily more mean, but it's like, all right, we got to do this, do that. And then it just didn't match. And I found, especially with my injury, like not being able to compete, I've had to like navigate how jiu-jitsu fits now and like the identity and whatnot. And I think being able to split both. So like every time I travel to America, it's a 3-month camp. So mentally, I guess I put on the hat of, all right, this is comp Mikey for the next 3 months. Then when I come back, it's coach again. And I think making that switch is important because when you're coaching, you have to care for your students. For me, anyway, I like to have the safe space. I don't like negative reinforcement. I don't like, the old school, like in the movie with the montage, you're screaming at your students. I don't like that at all. I just find it just doesn't work. So I try to be just a bit more open and more chill. But when you're competing, you can't do that, right? Exactly going off what you said about imposter syndrome and whatnot. Because then you're too chill, and then you get to a comp and you're like, oh no, like there's a world champion there. There's this guy's the best guy in the world. I got to fight him next. And you don't feel like you're worthy to be there. So there's that aspect of it as well. So I think for me, it's just being able to split both, having two sort of like Mikeys in a way.
Yeah.
And that sort of helps it a lot. And then
what helps
sort of
you
just going, I think having great coaches and other mentors as well, guiding you through that. for me, like how my philosophy with coaching, like I do like coaching more than I do competing. Like I think I am a better coach than a competitor. For me, it's my philosophy is, I guess, like upbringing and whatever. I looked at things that I didn't like and I wish I had. And I would always tell myself, oh, if I'm ever in a position where I'm sort of like on the other end, I don't want to make someone feel like how I felt at that time. So for example, like say if I had a question, and not to say my coach is great, but like certain places I would train at where, oh, this black belt's a bit standoffish. I want to ask him a question, but oh, he looks dismissive, and then oh, I just do this and do that. And I built the courage to ask a question, and then they sort of shut me down, and that felt bad. So now that I'm on the opposite end, that I'm people asking me questions, I sort of take note that I just don't want to ever make someone feel that. So I'll say, hey, how are you rolling? Do you have a question? All right, look, let's explore it together. They go, oh, I don't know how to do this. That's fine, you know, come and roll with me, and we'll have a look at it together. And so really what's helped me, is just things along the journey that I didn't like and just kept putting in the memory bank that if I'm ever on the other side, and the thing with jiu-jitsu is I always wanted a black belt, right? From the moment I started, I'm like, I love this. I'm going to get the black belt. Like however long it may take me, that's the goal I've set. So on that, I'm like, okay, one day if I become a coach, I'm a black belt. I don't want these traits. I don't want to make someone feel this that I've had experience along the journey. And I think that's the thing that's helped me the most, really, just having that, just knowing whatever I don't like, if I'm in the opposite end, I want to see if I can change it or not.
Yeah. How did you keep that compassion for yourself when you were going through that? Because I don't know, I feel like it's easy to take those things personally, especially if you're just starting off and like, I don't know. I mean, for me, I know for sure, like if someone were to just like shove me off like that, I'd be like, man, like now I know better. It's not about me, right? It's about them. But I feel like that might be hard to shake off. So like, how did you still connect with your own confidence and like, you know?
It's luckily I had a good training group. Now going off this now, I'm making myself sound like I'm this super compassionate and like humble, chill dude. But there are points, there's things that this is a thing that is stuck with me, which is why I try to change it. So when I started, there were a group of higher belts, right? And because I was the smallest in the class, so if you imagine you're the smallest and the least experienced, so they would fight amongst each other, and if they have a bad roll, they would fight me, and they would just beat me like 10, 20 times in the round with no remorse. Like just I guess to take out, I can still do well. And that thing has like stuck with me. So these certain individuals, now the tides have turned, right? And, you know, like certain people I've rolled who are, maybe they've got more injuries now and And if I roll them now, I hope they don't listen to this podcast anyway. But yes, they're a bit older now. And, you know, they're like, oh, I see, you young guys, you know, I'm a bit older. I've got a sore shoulder. As bad as this sounds, I have no remorse or compassion for them. I said, look, man, never once when I started, you said, hey, are you all right? You're the smallest guy. Maybe I won't put all my weight. Now when the tables are flipped, this is going to sound terrible, but hey, we're not perfect, right? Yeah, we're not perfect. I'm like, if you got a sore shoulder, that's not my problem. I'm still going to beat you up because you had no remorse for me. Now going off that, but going off that, I don't want to have that impression on a student. You know, I don't want to see a white belt and beat him up so bad that one day he's like, Mikey's never nice to me. And one day, because I've had people, you don't realize with jiu-jitsu, someone comes in, you train with them, eventually they get good, and they could potentially be a good training partner for you. Now, if you treat someone bad straight away, as they progress and they get good, they don't want to help you because they go, hey, you treated me terribly in the start. Why would I want to help you here? I know some of my training partners where on the first day, I'm like, oh, he's a white belt, but whatever, I'll be nice to him. Okay, I'll show him a few things, whatever. But now they're like brown belts and they become good friends of mine. They're like, hey, you were the only nice brown belt to me when we first started because everyone beat us up. And if I'm doing like a world's camp or whatever, I can call these guys and say, hey, if you're free at this time, would you mind coming in? And they're happy to come in because that first impression of been like how I treated them. Now, if you look at from me, if one of those other guys said, "Hey, Mikey, we're doing a Worlds camp. Can you help me?" I'll say, "No, I'm
Yeah.
busy that day." So
Yeah, for sure. No, I love the contrast because it's so quintessential of being a human and still carrying that pain. It's not like, I don't know,
yeah,
maybe I'm also like, because I can understand like being jaded and like kind of holding a
yeah,
grudge, for sure. And like I think
yeah,
there's so much culture, especially in coaching and personal development, of like forgiveness and like love and compassion and like just like no wrongs and like just protect your inner peace. And it's like, okay, and also like you're a human fucking being with feelings and you can be mad if you want to be
exactly.
mad. Like it honestly, like it's whatever, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
I love hearing that from your side, and especially because it sounds like there's such a culture of there's community, but then there's also the individual, and like both of them need to be values in order to be successful. But it's kind of like, on what side are you, or like where in the spectrum are you going to make your decisions? And you seem to be like just super conscientious of that.
It's so with jiu-jitsu, like I think just I guess in life in general, right? You just want to make sure you're doing the best that you can. And you sort of know when you're not doing the best. And you know how some people will have gauges like, oh, I need to beat this guy or I want to chase this guy. I found that never worked for me because you might beat this guy, right? And then you start to slack off a bit. I remember me as a white belt, that happened. I just got really good at particular move, which was the triangle choke, right? And I would tap people out nearly every class. And then I'll just slack off. I'm like, oh, I'm going to skip training today because I can come in next day and just triangle this guy again. And you know you're not doing well. Like, you know you're not putting in the work and you're not progressing, but you're using people as a gauge. And it's just, I'd rather just focus on myself. And the reason I bring that up, because when you're training for a comp, it's very competitive. Even myself with an ego, whatever, yes, I'm compassionate, whatever. But like I said, when I switched to Mikey mode, I'd fight anyone. I'll give myself a chance, like if this guy wants to beat me, all right, we'll give it a go. And I believe I have a shot at maybe beating this guy. Like you have to have that mentality, right? But sometimes if you just beat the guys here and you go, oh yeah, I won't need to do an extra session afterwards because I beat these guys. But you could, and you should, right? So you're not giving the best of yourself, but you just focus, all right, I do a training session, regardless of what happens. I know I'm still lacking in these bits, fix it, be honest and just fix it. And just hyping yourself up. And then further into that point, you need that because in a competitive sporting room, people are not always going to be nice, right? People are going to say, oh, Mikey doesn't have this, or, he's not as good as this, or no, I actually beat him with that, or this doesn't work. And there's a lot of that talk because it's understandable. You're all fighting. You look from here, you might have to fight for that one spot to get to this competition. And then from there, only one or two of you gets to go there. So it's a very competitive environment. So you have to just sometimes just be in your internal dialogue, know what you have to work and know your own worth to say, hey, I know I'm good at this. I've trained hard at this. Whatever they say, whatever. If they beat me with it, let's problem solve that. Don't get caught up in the particular person and say, all right, now what, like you're better than me, and you get too caught up in the emotion, just say, let it go. All right, he beat me because he put his hand this way. Workshop it. How do I defeat him from not putting his hand there? And just being your own personal development and not taking anything too personal. I think that's really important, especially when it comes to that high level competition stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like when it comes to mastery and like talking about how you climb the ranks in something that is so like other people centered, like you need somebody to roll with, right? Like, I'm assuming
Yeah,
you can't just do like BJJ on yourself.
exactly. And
So
that's the thing, because like I said, going off being nice to people, right? Jiu-jitsu, it's really important there because you need exactly what you said. I need a training partner to help me. And you forget that people have lives and stuff, right? So you calling someone, hey, can you come in at 11 to 12 to help me? He or she is putting something aside to give you their time, right? And how do you build that relationship? You have to give something back, So for me, if I do, all right, can you come and work this with me? I need this for the competition. maybe later on the week, I'm like, there's something you need help with. We'll spend, an hour just working on something for you. So you need that back and forth. And I think that's the most important. Like some competitors think I'm a black belt, whatever. Hey, you and you, I need to roll with you and we'll go hard. What you don't realize is doing that, people don't feel valued and they won't give you authentic responses. They'll be like, oh, forget this guy. I'm just going to lay here and pretend to do this and get the round over with. So it's detrimental to your training too, because they don't want to give you a proper response because you're treating them like a training dummy essentially, and not, a training partner or a friend. So it's important to realize that, yes, as much as you're a competitor and you have to do all this, you can't forget that you have to give back, or else none of this works, because it's so reliant on another person. As much as you go out and compete by yourself, you can't do that without, even though the team's not out there like basketball, right? It's still a team effort. And I think some people, especially when they compete a lot, they forget that, we are a team at the end of the day, and you do have to give back to the guys.
Yeah, it's interesting because like what I'm hearing a lot of is like part of this developing like a masterful mindset and like a world champion mindset is like so much about valuing other humans and being a good, like, compassionate human being that like actually sees the value in people, which is interesting because I didn't have any assumptions coming in, but I was like, oh, we're definitely just going to be talking a lot about mindset and like, overcoming your own personal stuff. But like, there's so much about the other people that you don't see from the outside, I guess.
Yeah, no, exactly right there. And I think going off what you said about mastery and compassion and stuff, I think that's why I'm glad, like, getting rid of that Asian culture, whatever, and admitting, like, how if you express something that you don't know or this and that, it's more like a sign of weakness. Like, no, you should know all this and that. Now with jiu-jitsu, it's great because you can't actually know everything. So we'll get to, like, when you're a white belt, blue belt, that whole Dunning-Kruger thing where you're like, yes, so there's an arm bar, there's this and that. I got it. So if he does this, you think you've mastered it at a blue belt. You talk with your friends, they're like, yeah, I'll just do this and do that. And as you you go further up, you realize there's so many things, like infinite paths, that you can't master everything. So like an example, by purple belt, you develop a game of your personality, or just how you like, whether you like to fight on top and wrestle or on your back. And you have to choose, all right, I like this. I'm going to follow this path for the next 3 years. And you have to, unless you're training 24 hours a day, you have to sort of shelve a few things and then go there. So you'll be really good at one or two things, but probably not great at the other. And I think heading to black belt, some people don't allow themselves, like, once you're black belt, you have a general idea of a lot of things and you specialize in a small amount. Like there's certain position I could give you high level detail, and certain positions maybe just a general concept. But at black belt, I think there's that persona, the ego, the insecurity, where some coaches will be like, oh, just how do you do this? They know they don't know how to do it, but they're like, oh, instead of doing this, I would just do that. And I probably wouldn't use this. Just go here and do that instead. And a way to mask like your gap in knowledge and, oh, I'm a black belt, I should know everything. But I think in order to get that mastery, because it's just an ongoing thing, you just say, look, I don't know. And you go, oh, wow, I didn't realize how much I don't know about this. Maybe I should go back and have a look at this, because everyone's asking questions. Or one thing I'll do is someone asks a question, I'm like, look, I don't know. I'll find out for you. Maybe I'll go ask another black belt, or maybe I'll look on YouTube or something. And I think so at black belt, a lot of people stop because they built up the black belt so much that, oh, I'm a black belt, I'm a master, which, yes, you are in a way, but at the same time, you should know that by this stage, you can't learn everything. So why are you sort of like telling yourself that you should know everything, which is impossible? So
It's
I
so much
think
like life.
yeah, exactly. You grow up, you're 18 or 21, you think, yeah, I've mastered it, I know everything. And you realize you don't know.
Yeah, it's crazy because that's like its own conditioning within jiu-jitsu of like that is the symbol that you've got your shit together, like everything, and you're so quick and it's so easy for you to be honest with yourself and other people about like, I don't know this, and like, let's figure out how, and like keep that like beginner's mindset almost, and keep that
Yeah,
open-mindedness to
for
keep
sure.
learning and be curious. Is that just something that comes natural to you, or is that something that you had to kind of learn for yourself?
For me is I think I'm very lucky that as I competed overseas, I've got to train with many different coaches and get experience on different styles of coaching and whatnot. Like when I first started, I assumed I had to be, a loud projecting voice. So yeah, we're doing this way. And my first year, I'll be honest, I just didn't really enjoy it. I thought, oh, maybe this is not for me. I don't have the projecting voice. Oh, do this, do that, until I traveled to, I guess, my first time to America, and I spent extended time there training with the coaches there, and he wasn't projecting. He would just say, all right, guys, do this, do that. This is an option there. This is an option there. And like, oh, wait a minute. He's pretty chill. Is it a California thing or like, so seeing that, and I'm like, wait a minute. So I could just coach the way I want. And then I spent purple belt finding how I like to coach. Do I like to structure things this way? Do I like to say I know everything? Do I not know everything? And then finding that, and then now towards black belt, I think I've found my style. Now, going off what you said about being easy to say, like, I don't know certain techniques, is one, I think, definitive moment. I went to train with, like, I have friends who train at other gyms. So I went to visit, and well, with the coach, he medaled at like the most prestigious competition in the world. So he came back, he was teaching class, and someone had a question, and he said, oh, I would probably do this and that, but I'm not really sure. But so-and-so is going to be here in an hour. Maybe ask him. But yeah, he's like, I would do this, but I think there's more to it. Maybe you wait till he asks. And I was mind blown. I'm like, whoa, this guy just medaled at the best comp. And he sat there and just said, I don't know this. Maybe ask. And then I'm like, my God, if he can do that, I can do that. I can say I don't know. Yeah, and that sort of changed it for me. And you realize, because it's a skill-based sport, and if you're nice to your students, whatever. So I took the mindset like, okay, if I say I don't know, someone might have the answer. And I think my students, most of it, if they genuinely respect you and want to be in your class, they'll say, oh, that's fine. We'll figure it out next time. But if, say, the reaction you don't want, that you're scared of, like, oh, Mikey doesn't know anything, like, I'm going to leave. Is that someone you really want in your class or your life? And I think we forget that sometimes. If someone has that reaction, it's not someone we actually want to be around anyway. But we're so obsessive over that particular reaction sometimes, which is, yeah, some people might say, oh, no, I don't like Mikey's style. Okay, that's fine. Maybe, okay. And then sometimes I change. Let's say, okay, they give feedback. You're not doing enough this, you're not doing enough that. I try to explain why we do it. And if it's still no good, I'm like, all right, maybe let me take inside advice and let's see what we can switch around. But if someone just dismisses it completely, then, what are you going to do? Like, if you're honest with yourself and you don't know something, you just don't know it, right? I can find out and how to do it, but at this point in time, if I'm completely honest, I don't know. So
Yeah.
it's having high level guys show that vulnerability and knowing your reaction. I think that's a big part. Like, I looked at how I reacted to them, right? So he said, I don't know this thing, wait till someone asks. I had no change in respect or anything. I'm like, oh, okay, he doesn't know it. I'll wait till so-and-so comes. But I think sometimes we don't allow people to feel that to us. We think people won't look at us with that same reaction. Everyone's going to not like me, or they're going to judge me. But you forget, hey, maybe they might be the same. They might, oh, Mikey doesn't know this. I'll wait and ask or whatever. And there's no change in respect or judgment there.
Yeah, I think there's so much humility in being able to like admit like when you don't know something, and it's kind of sad that I even have to say like admit, because it's just like the truth of it. And like there's no shame in it either, because I think when you said how this guy demonstrated him saying that he doesn't know a certain technique, it didn't seem like there's any shame attached to it. It was just like, I just don't know it, right? And in society, there's so much conditioning, especially for men, to like have to know things. And like there's such a pressure, like in school too, of it's not okay to say I don't know. You either have to guess and then feel bad if you're wrong, or like if you don't know, like it's because you need to go to an authority to know, right? And like you can't trust
Yeah,
yourself. And for men especially, it's such a attachment to ego and like what a man is, or like who they should be,
exactly. Oh, it's
versus
terrible.
like with women, there's like so much apology when it comes to, it's like it's not just, oh, they're so quick to say I don't know, but then there's all the shame, like, oh, I'm so sorry, like I don't know, and like, oh, blah, 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 like,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
try to
yeah,
make it
yeah.
up to you, and right, and it's like, oh wow, what a interesting like melding that we have there.
Yeah, and I think going off that, like especially men and jiu-jitsu as well, what I've noticed is sometimes when people don't know, a way to mask it is just to like dismiss a certain thing. So like my game is like I like going like upside down and rolling around this and that. And it is quite a technical position because you're essentially trying to work things out while you're upside down, right? And other coaches might see and say, oh, they don't know what's going on, but instead of saying, oh, I don't know, ask Mikey, or it's a technical move that maybe I just don't know, they're like, oh, that doesn't work, it's all this new age California stuff that doesn't
Really?
work. Oh yeah, it's
Oh wow.
really prevalent there. That's another way they mask it. So I try, like I have to catch myself. Sometimes I find myself doing it too, and I'm like, oh wait, like I get too deep into my own philosophy and game, and I have to catch myself and go, wait a minute, like I don't know this, that works. Obviously, it's worked in a competition. You can still do it. I just don't know. Ask someone else. So yeah, so the problem with jiu-jitsu is I think it's very similar. You know how they talk about when if people win money, they'll win the lotto. It's not like they're changing. It's just like their true self is coming out, right? Like if you're
Mhm.
a super generous guy in general, when you get money, you're just going to be more generous,
Right.
or type of thing,
Right. Like
right?
money
And
just makes you more of who you are.
exactly. And jiu-jitsu, it's very similar because they always have, what I don't like is this whole, oh, jiu-jitsu saves lives, martial arts, it humbles you, da da da. Like it is the same with anything else. Like you might have that honeymoon period as a white belt. Well, then after that, it's the same as any workplace, anywhere in life. Say, for example, you're a really relaxed guy. So I have a good friend, a mentor, and he's a black belt. He's always been a super nice dude, super humble. And as he's got into his black belt, he's actually extra humble now. He doesn't even talk about it. And I think because you're at that level where you're just super humble, you don't care. But if someone were to question that, you're a black belt, you probably beat them up. Okay. Now, if you are a terrible person and you just an asshole in general, right? As you get to a black belt, you can be even a worse person. Because if someone has a problem with that, you're a black belt and you can beat them up. So, so that's like the thing with jiu-jitsu. As you see people progress, whatever their personality traits are, it sometimes unfortunately does get, well, either way, like either worse or better. And it's been a very unique observation.
Yeah, I think
Like,
like
yeah,
that like definitely just plays a part in life, right? Where obviously like how money is, accomplishments, like anything with that, like having a degree, not having a degree, it's so much of people's self-projected ego of like who they think they are, but it's not even who they think they are, it's who they think they are in relation to other people, like what other people perceive them as, and
yes,
then they like feed into it, or they like they need to keep up this front, because it sounds like you've had this kind of perspective when you started, or like you've been able to like kind of just cultivate it. What was it about your journey, like just starting off, even like just coming into it as a career, that kind of helped shape your perspectives as you went along?
I think I'll be honest, I didn't want to use it a career and even coach, to be honest. Like I was like any other young male, you watch UFC, you see guys fighting, you wrestle with your friends and your cousins,
Oh my
and then
gosh.
just like that, yeah. And then you're like, oh, I want to try it. And there's a gym around the corner, and I said, yeah, I want to do jiu-jitsu. Actually, I want to do MMA. I'm like, yeah, I want to do MMA. Found a gym. I did some striking. I got punched badly by some girl, and I'm like, I don't like this, but the
Oh my
jiu-jitsu was
god.
great. Yeah. So I stuck with the jiu-jitsu, and I just wanted to compete and do that. And then the unique thing was finding like coaching and you helping someone, and it was a great feeling. I'm like, oh wow, this is pretty cool. And it wasn't like, I think what didn't stand out was trying to help competitors. Not to say that's a bad thing, but just people who don't have confidence, whatever. And you go, hey, do this, do this. Then they get a bit of confidence, and then they're like, oh, Mike, thanks for, the other day, it really helped me. And then when you get messages like that, you're like, wow, this is a great feeling, like to have that type of impact on people. Now, in terms of career, it wasn't planned. Like I finished uni, I'm like, you know what? I want to take 2 years to compete. And then here we are.
Oh my
Three-
gosh.
yeah, so
What
it's
was that like belief like what did you have, what was your mind at in terms of being able to hold that belief and give yourself that 2 year span? Because I know so many people who like want to do things with their life, change careers, be an entrepreneur, whatever, and they're like, I'll give myself like 6 months or like a year, or like they think like if they can't get it by like a month, then like they're a failure. They're never going to be able to be successful.
it's funny that I think so I had a really bad injury, and that turned out to be a positive in a way. So when I finished uni, I think I was about midway through my purple belt, right? So there's white, blue, purple, brown, and black. And I was starting to get a bit over it, burnt out sort of, right? Like I've trained like every day for the last 5, 6 years. So when I finished uni, I'm like, oh, you know what? This will be like my farewell tour type of thing. All right. I'm going to finish, train hard, do the major comps. And then, whatever happens next, I'll probably just shelve jiu-jitsu for a bit and do other things. So I trained really hard for the world championships. And the week before, I had my last hard training session, and I rolled some guy. It was my fault. Like it wasn't them. My leg got caught somewhere. I went up and I just heard like a huge tear. And so I pretty much tore my LCL, and I couldn't compete. So that was done like the week before. After all that training, the week before, I tear my knee. So it was over. But, I mean, obviously you're devastated. But I think what that gave me was that hunger again. Like I really wanted. So going from being burnt out and using this as a farewell tour to getting injured, I'm like, no, I want to come back. Like I really want to do this. So then that second year was like, I guess like getting back to like excitement, and because you know how it's there, you sometimes take it for granted. And then when it's completely gone, you're like, oh wait, you forget how much you really loved having it in your life. So with that second year competing, and then because I fully went into it, I was at the gym all the time. So I started coaching as well. And then from there, it's just kept getting better. And then I realized, I wouldn't say it's like a gift. I don't want to sound like I'm some like whatever. Like it just gravitated naturally to me, like the coaching side, like I'm not saying like it just comes easy, whatever, but naturally I was able to do it well, like I do this, I can problem solve quite well. And in that space of jiu-jitsu, it just felt very natural. Nothing was forced. Like if I were to take a class, someone asked me a question, if I was doing a private lesson, nothing ever felt really, I wouldn't say it's not like it didn't feel difficult. It just felt really natural. Like, how some things you do at work or gym or whatever it is, like there's a certain like effort and or not. But this is just one thing that like I've never felt before. Like it was just really natural. Like when I did stuff, I felt like I could be in the moment, and not to say it
You're just
didn't
in
take effort,
flow.
but it's just, yeah, yes, exactly. That's the best way to explain it. I was just in flow. And I thought, okay, I might like to do this because yes, I mean, you can go the other way, have a good career, money, this and that. But I found the unique thing of being able to influence people's lives in a more, sort of like what you do, right? Like it's very rewarding when someone comes up and say, hey, someone comes in super shy, super anxious, and then in a few months, they're competing, and you see them like have a new spring in their step, and then they take that to outside of jiu-jitsu into the rest of their life. And it's such a unique feeling to be able to help people do that. So I think because of that, I'm like, wow, this is very something special that I get to do. Not just teaching people to choke each other, but like off that,
Yeah.
there's always benefits of that. Yeah.
100%. Service is a spiritual practice, and flow is a spiritual practice. Like just gratitude, presence, all the things, compassion, all the things that I think were key points that we like hit on today, and the things that you bring into jiu-jitsu and your life is honestly, it's such a reflection of your own spirit and your own soul, and hearing how much like it connected coaching connected with you and being able to help these people, because it's not about how much you can go, like how many accomplishments you can have, how many competitions you
Yeah,
can win.
yeah,
It's like so much that internal glow up that you see and that internal growth
yeah.
that is what not only makes the process and like us doing what we do like enjoyable, but also for the other person receiving it, it's literally life changing.
Oh, for sure, I agree. And you think about, I think jiu-jitsu is great because it's like you're playing like a game of life, but in like accelerated. Like you can, because you plant things and then you see how they progress quite quickly. For example, let's just say you give someone bad life advice. You probably won't know until maybe like later
Oh
on,
my
you're an
god.
adult. But in jiu-jitsu, you
Yeah.
could give them bad advice and you could see it straight away. And you see like all the dynamics, the ego. Like I'm a black belt, right? So if say you and I was teaching you something, you trust me that I'm black belt. I could say, all right, Jen, you put your hand behind your back and you do this and you move forward. This is a black belt technique. And you would listen to me, you'd believe me, right? Because I'm a black belt. And then you get out there and someone would choke you and you're like, ah, that's no good. So, so the idea is that you see how the stuff you show people and you know if it's not genuine or whatnot, it's just a detriment to them. You could say, nah, do this. I like to do it this way. And as they progress, they're just going on the wrong path and you're showing them the wrong path. And it just shows, yeah, like life, like you give someone bad advice, you don't say you don't know, you tell them something bad. It could influence them in a bad way. And you don't realize how much influence sometimes you have on people, like a word you say or something you don't say. And that's something as a coach, like going off the black belt thing, I didn't realize how much weight your word has as a coach and a black belt coach in particular. Like I always joke around, like Australian culture, you joking around your friend, you always like making fun of each other, like all the time. But I had to catch that with students. If I do that, they're like, oh, why is this really bad? Like, oh, am I doing something? I'm like, oh, okay, wait. So maybe let's keep the fun and roasting with just the higher level friends. And if I'm in coach mode, because you go in there and say, oh, how am I going, coach? I'm like, you did really well today. Like, I'm really liking this. That makes someone's day. Like you don't realize how much a few words from you makes their day. And then the opposite, if you just, dude, like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? That just crumbles them. And as a black belt, there's so much weight in that I had to be really mindful of my words when I communicate with people. Like as a blue belt, no one cares. Like, it's just a blue belt, whatever. His words don't mean much. But then as a black belt, Mikey said this and that, and they might go home and think about it. So
Yeah.
you just think, like, yeah.
Do you teach your students to like not personalize it, things like that? Like keeping yourself and then your skills and like you as your sport separate. Does that make sense?
Yes. Oh, for sure. And so it's hard for like beginners because you're going to problem solve something, right? They're going to have a question. All right, I'm doing this, but I'm falling off this way. I'm like, all right, so how you fix that is do this. Now, like I said, there's just infinite moves. There's always going to be a problem to another solution. So it's just going to go back and forth forever, right? Until someone has that gap in knowledge and that's how you win. So I think that's getting them to understand that is the biggest thing, that you can't know everything. And at blue belt, even myself as a blue belt, I watch DVDs, instructionals, do private lessons. I think I've got the answer to everything. But until that moment where you realize you just can't know everything, and that's okay. That's the big one, that it's okay not to know everything. Then they progress better because the pressure's off them. And I think going off what you said about compassion, I think being honest, you know how sometimes you think, this is just going like in general, you're having a bad day, you feel terrible and you're just so low and you're like, man, no one gets it. Like, I'm so stressed and I feel this. And then you just have a casual meet up with someone like, hey man, like for me, like going off a tangent here, this been a stressful month anyway. And my strength and conditioning coach hasn't trained much jiu-jitsu and I haven't done much strength and conditioning. So we met up yesterday and I just said, look, man, it's been a long month. I feel burnt out and whatnot. And he echoed the same thing. He said, I feel exactly the same. How about we do what we do? Let's enjoy the rest of the year and we'll both start again next year. And I'm like, like you're not alone. And that's why I tell my students, so if they compete, if they have a gap in knowledge as a purple belt. So for purple belt, you've trained for 6-7 years. They sometimes feel like they should know everything. So I'll get them to run a class and they panic. Oh, I don't know this, I don't know that. I'm just show what you know. There's nothing wrong with that. I said, look, I teach class every day. Sometimes I don't know. And a good example is there's a particular move called a guillotine. So you're essentially putting someone's like head here and you're like trying to choke them. Now, this move has never worked for me. Like, I just can't get it right. Over 12 years, like I'll get someone in there and I just can't finish the move.
Oh my God.
so, so going off that, as I was teaching them in class, I showed them in theory on how it should work. But I was honest. I said, hey guys, look, I said, even me teaching now, I said, look, I feel a bit nervous and there's a bit of imposter syndrome right now. And I said, I'll be completely honest because I have never hit this in a live role. So this in theory is how it should work. But, you know, have a look at YouTube, ask other coaches or even amongst each other and troubleshoot. I said, look, I'm going to do my best. And I'll be honest, I'm actually very nervous teaching this right now. But, you know, let's just give it a go. And for them as purple belts, they're like, oh, okay, well, they might look at you, oh, Mikey is an encyclopedia, he knows everything. But to show that, oh, even Mikey doesn't know things, it makes them feel better. Oh, I might be a purple belt, I've trained for 7 years. But yeah, okay, oh yeah, I don't know how to do that too. I don't know how to do this. I can have a gap in my knowledge and still work because Mike is still learning stuff. He's teaching things he doesn't even use. So it's, I think that's the most important thing. Just have that, like going off what we're talking about, compassion, just to show that, yes, I am just, we're all the same, right? You know, whatever insecurity you think is unique to you, oh, you know, I'm going to compete. If I lose, I'm going to disappoint my coaches. Well, I feel the same. You know, I feel like if I lose, I'm going to disappoint you. You guys come in every day to my class. You wake up early. I go to, remember that time I went to a competition? It was a no-gi worlds. I vividly remember this. I messaged you and I'm like, all right, I'm off to the comp. Got there, got tapped out in 40 seconds. And it's like, oh my God.
Oh,
And it
yes.
happens. Yeah, that was like the worst moment ever. And then, and going further off that, the guy got me in armbar at 20 seconds. And I looked at the clock. I'm like, Mikey, you can't tap out at 20 seconds. You guys got to hold it off. So I just let him keep cranking it. And I knew I couldn't get out, but I guess the ego of not wanting to be finished in 20 seconds. And then I looked at time. I'm like, 40 seconds is okay, whatever.
Like, just don't break my arm.
Yeah, exactly. So I think expressing that emotion. So when I came back, I said, look, I felt embarrassed. You know, you guys all trained with me. You woke up early to watch LA time of me losing in 40 seconds. And they all said, look, it doesn't matter, whatever. So I said, just remember what you just said to me, because it's the same reverse. You go compete, whatever happens, I feel exactly the same. I don't care. Just, I'm glad you went out and did it because it takes a lot of courage, and we'll come back and we'll just keep, you know, it's just part of the journey, right? And I think for my class, that's helped so much. Like it's such a one, like it took me a few years to like cultivate, but this class is like, I am so, like some days I'm so grateful because we'll just have like a collaborative effort. Yes, I'm a black belt, but everyone just chimes in. Hey, I would do it this way, do it this way. Would you do it this way? And there's always this running joke if someone shows something completely different, they're like, oh, you think you're better than Mikey now, like da da da. So it's a really fun thing, and I think that's only opened because I've opened up and say, hey, it's okay.
I love that. Being, I mean, you know, you being a leader, it's always like you go first and you demonstrate
Yeah.
that so beautifully. And I always say too, like a leader is just the person who holds the strongest belief. And you are so like always in alignment with yourself, like even in the humanness, right? Because alignment also makes room for the contrast, but I feel like you're so you, and you can see it. So thank you so much for all of this and like all your pieces
No,
of
thank
wisdom
you.
here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. With that, is there anything else that you want to say to people about jiu-jitsu or life or anything?
I think it's just, yeah, just being open, and I guess knowing that for me, I guess as a male and Asian, just vulnerability doesn't mean weakness. I think it's probably like the biggest take I can give. I think going through jiu-jitsu, going through life, and knowing that you can open up and it's fine. I think that's the biggest thing, because going off a tangent here, like growing up Asian, you have that immigrant guilt of, okay, I doing jiu-jitsu, but I should be doing something that makes a lot of money and then supporting my parents and whatnot. But if you just hold that, then there's a lot of unnecessary resentment to your life or your parents, which shouldn't be there. But if you just open up and say, hey, this is how I feel, other people feel similar things, and they might say, you know what, it doesn't matter. Everyone's actually fine. Like, you can do what you want. We just want you to be happy or whatever it is. And you're like, so this was just in my head, sort of type thing. You know what I mean? So yes, I think just processing your emotions and being allowed to process it and being open, I think has been life-changing for me, and I hope everyone can find their way of doing that.
I love that. That's beautiful. If people want to find you on social or watch you in competition, where can they find you?
So all my competitions are on the jiu-jitsu site called Flow Grappling. But if you just follow my Instagram, Mixpec, MIGSPEC, I'll have like competition and videos and stuff on there.
Okay, awesome. All that stuff will be down in the show notes below. I also did a little research beforehand, and I can also find you on YouTube.
Oh yes, yeah, I do have a few instructions on YouTube. Yes.
So if you want to see clips of Mikey in action, you can find that on YouTube. But thank you so much for being on here. It's been such a pleasure.
No, thank you, Jen. Thanks for having me.